Hello, my name's Tuppence. I'm going to be making a pot today, and I've got one of my favourite type of moulds. This is a flat lidded pot and it's so easy to decorate. I've got some real seashells. I might not use those, I'm not sure yet. I want to make a pot that looks like the ocean, so I will definitely be using these. These are Fusible films, sometimes known as Angelina films. I've also got some blue dye from JDiction, so I'm going to use that to tint the resin. Before I mix up my resin, I need to prepare the fusible film. So let me just get all of this stuff out of the way. And then I'll get a bit of this out of the packet. This is Peacock Blue, which is a beautiful colour. It's almost sapphire actually. And then I'm using the mint green as well. So I think they're great ocean colours. They look great on their own, but when you combine them, it's going to make something magical. You can see I've got all these little pieces. I keep all of those as well. Don't throw your scraps away, because they are amazing in projects. Okay, let me unfold some of this and then I can measure how much I'm going to need. Yeah, I think I can double that up, so I'm going to cut a strip off and then I'll be able to cut that in half along its length, and that should go all the way around the pot. I absolutely love this stuff. It comes in so many colours. I've used it a couple of times before, but the real magic happens when you stick different colours together and you use a heat gun to bond them and create texture. So I'm going to lay this on top. I can already see some amazing colours happening. I've put this on top of some parchment paper or greaseproof paper. Whoops, let me unfold that. And I'm going to apply my heat gun to this. I'm not holding it too close, but it won't melt them exactly, but it will cause them to crinkle up and they will stick together, fuse together, which is why it's called fusible film. So I'm just going to create some texture and different colours. And I'm hoping it's going to look like the patterns of light that you get in deep ocean when that sunlight filters through. You see it on documentaries filming under the sea, and you just have that glorious dance of light under the ocean. So I'm hoping it's going to look a bit like that. I'm going to heat it from the back as well and try and flatten those bubbles. Ouch! Oh, I hit my heat gun. That's a little bit hot. Right, I'm going to cut this in half. And then I can measure that and see if this fits. So I'm just waving that a little bit because I don't want straight lines along the bottom. I'm going to fold my mould inside out and then I can see if I've got the right depth. There we go. Right, let me try that. So I think that's going to be a little bit too deep. So let me just chop some of the bottom off. I'll just straighten up that bit at the bottom. Just a tiny bit. All right, that should be okay. I'm going to keep those little bits as well. And now that looks like that might be a little bit better. Okay, so it's not going to cover all of it. It's not going to be perfectly round, but I'm just going to try and fold my mould back. I've grabbed hold of that film and I can stuff it in, and there you go. I just need to straighten that out a little bit. I can see through the sides of the mould, so I don't want it to be too badly folded over because that's going to cause bubbles. So I'm going to need to do the same thing on that one. Let me just get rid of that lump. Don't really need it to be that long. All right, and I'll cut off that bit as well because that's just a single film, and this should be enough to bridge that gap. So can I tuck that down? Now the problem is it is plastic, so it does want to cling onto the mould, so it's not the easiest thing to get in the mould, but let me just see if I can tuck that down. I haven't got very much to get in there, but no. All right, I'm going to fold this back and that will make it a lot easier just to lay that in place, and I can make sure that I get the edges overlapping. So I'm just going to tuck that in, let it overlap a little bit, and then I can lay that down. Ooh, it's just the right length. Okay, let me just straighten that out a little bit. And then I can just fold the mould back. That was so much easier. And as I say, I can see, whoops, I've got a bit that I need to fold down again. I don't want to create pockets where bubbles are going to get trapped. It's inevitable that I will have some bubbles, and I'm not going to mind that. You do get bubbles in the ocean, so it will look okay. All right, that's pretty good. So that looks like it goes all the way round. It looks amazing in there already. Again, these are going to go in my bag and I will save those for another project. I'm going to use this ring that I made from another mould to act as a support in the middle and just keep this completely round. I recently used the smaller pot that came in this set to create a strawberry pot out of aquacast, and unfortunately that deformed, so I've learnt my lesson and I'm going to make sure that this stays nice and round. I've fused another sheet of film together and I have this metal ring which is part of a die cutting set for paper. It fits perfectly in the bottom of the mould, so I'm going to use that as a template to cut round, and I should end up with a disc that will fit perfectly in the bottom of the lid. I'm just using some frog tape to secure that ring down, and then I'll be able to cut around the outside with a pair of scissors. Alright, that is nice and neat. Alright, just take the tape off and that will be perfect to fit in the bottom of that lid. It's a 2-tier lid. Save those pieces. Alright, that's a perfect fit and you'll be able to see that colour when you look down on top of the lid. I need to get some gloves on and then I can mix up my resin. I've got everything on my G3 tray just to catch drips, and I'm using Resin by JDiction. So I don't know how much I'm going to need. I'm going to mix up 4 ounces. So I'm putting part B in and then I'll top up with part A. I'm mixing up enough to make sure that I can fill up my pot completely, but the lid needs to be poured in 2 layers. Otherwise that disc is just going to float to the top. It's going to move around, so I need to make sure that that is secured first. Okay, so I've got 8 ounces and that is pretty close to the top of the cup. I'm going to stir this slowly until I get that all combined and I have no more streaks and it's nice and clear. I'm going to add my dye now. This is super strong, so I'm just going to try and put 1 blob in. Whoops. I managed to splash it onto my mat, which is exactly the reason that I'm using this tray in the first place. So I just get this all mixed up. I've got quite a lot of dye on the spatula, but that is dark enough already. So let me just clean this off, get rid of that, and then I can make sure that this is thoroughly mixed all the way through. I don't want this to be streaky. That looks pretty good. You can see just how dark that colour is. All right, I'm going to put a little bit in the lid. As I said, this lid has 2 layers, so I'm just going to fill it up a little bit above that. I need enough resin in there that I can slide this disc underneath it. Whoops, that might be a little too much. So I'm going to start filling up the pot. I'm going to just leave a little bit in there and let it work its way down. It's got to go past that film. You can see there are quite a lot of air bubbles along the outside. So I'm just going to let that find its way. In the meantime, there are a lot of bubbles in this lid mould as well. So I need to wait for some of those to rise up to the top. Otherwise, I'm just going to trap them underneath the film. In fact, if I just give them a quick pop, that was close. I nearly dropped something in it. Just pick those up. Right, I'm going to use my torch just to give this a quick pop. It's stinking hot in my studio at the moment, so I'm figuring this is going to degas pretty quickly. But I'm just popping the bubbles on the surface because I don't want to push those underneath. Right, that looks pretty good. I've got to get that blob of resin dye out, so I might as well take my dotting tool and run that around the lip and the edge. Just make sure that there aren't any bubbles strapped there, and then I can mix that dye in. I'm so clumsy at the moment, it's crazy. I very nearly dropped cups into it and spilled the resin dye everywhere. Alright, I think that's pretty good. Just make sure that there aren't any bubbles around the edges. Give it another quick torch in case I mixed anything up. And now I'm going to pop this in. So I'm going to fold this a little bit like a taco and just kind of push it down and try and push it underneath a little bit. I'm scooping the resin up. And then I'm going to drop it gently down. Now, lots of bubbles are going to get trapped underneath that texture. So I'm just going to keep trying to squeeze them out and push this down underneath the resin. Got quite a lot in here, actually. I think I might have too much. Well, I'll see how that goes, but I've got a feeling that's going to float. So I might have to take some of that resin out. But I'll leave it for a minute. Okay. Let's have a look at this pot and see how that's doing. All that resin's dropped down to the bottom now. So I'm just going to give this a gentle squeeze. I can't squeeze it too much because it does have that ring support in the bottom. But I just want to kind of jiggle that resin around a little bit. Gentle massage. I don't want any really big air pockets in there because that's just going to lead to a hole in the finished piece. Equally, I want resin to be either side of that film. Otherwise I'm going to end up with a plastic showing through. The good thing about these moulds is they are really see-through, so I can see where all the bubbles are. So I'm just going to spend a little time squeezing the pot and massaging it and bringing those bubbles up to the surface, making sure that, you know, the resin goes all the way behind that film. And I'm going to babysit that disc in the lid, and if it starts to rise up to the surface and move around, I'm going to take out some of that resin just to make sure that it stays in the bottom half of the lid. And I'll be back once these are cured. I'm not going to put them in my G3 machine. It is more than warm enough in this room. They'll probably cure in, well, half the time, I would imagine. So I will be back when I can add the second layer to my lid and finish everything off. Okay, confession time. I had to start the lid again. It was rising up to the surface, and then unfortunately I had a visitor and it set solid before I could do anything about it. So I have restarted the lid. The bottom layer is cured and I am adding a layer of blue resin on top. Not quite enough to fill this up because I've got some clear resin which I want to add into this. And I'm hoping this is going to kind of give me a streaky effect. So I want kind of tones of colour. Now this may well all blend together. As I say, it is still stinking hot in here. So this is curing so quickly. Let me just scrape everything out and we'll just see how this goes. Now my plan is to let this set just enough so that I can put some plastic on top and create some texture, like waves. Alright, it is about an hour and 45 minutes later and I got a feeling this has set too much. I don't know, we'll see. I'm going to pop some cling film on the top, make sure that it is all covered pretty loosely. And then I want to use my fingers to make ripples or waves in the surface. So I'm really pushing this down. I don't know that I'm actually making that much of an impression. I think this is set way too hard. I think it's too late. Anyway, I'm not going to know until I've left that to cure. So I'm going to leave this plastic on, let that completely cure, and I'll be back. Time to take this off and see what I've got. And that is completely flat. Apart from a little bit of crinkling around the edges from that plastic, yeah, it did nothing. Okay, so I need a plan B, and that is some UV resin. This is the Let's Resin UV resin. I'm going to pop that into a silicone cup and add a tiny bit of pearl powder. So I really don't want this to be opaque. I just want a hint of shimmer, if you like. So I'm just going to get that mixed in. That's not too bad. And then I need to pour this on top of the lid. So you can see I've kept it in the mould. Make sure that I scrape out everything. It looks pretty good as it is now. It looks bubbly. So I just need to spread that out, make sure that it covers the whole surface. I hope I've got enough, but if I don't, I can always add a little bit more. In fact, it's easier if I just use my fingers to spread this out. I don't need a thick layer, and I haven't actually got room for a thick layer. I'm going to try and get the same texture that I was looking to get with the cling film on the epoxy resin, only this time because I'm using UV resin, it's not going to set until I want it to. I've got some really nice swirls and ripples now, but that won't stay around. It will flatten out before I get a chance to cure it. So I am going to cover this again with the cling film. This is the same sheet that I used before, and I'm going to create a series of parallel ripples across the surface, you know, so it mimics the waves that you would see in the middle of the ocean. So I don't want anything to be too tight, otherwise it's going to trap that plastic in between. And I've got this still in the mould so that if it pushes any of that resin out over the side, I can easily remove it. It's not going to be on the side of the lid. So when I'm happy with that, I'm going to cure it. Now I can try and remove that cling film from the top. So it's kind of tearing. There are a few places where it has got trapped. I'm just going to spend a couple of minutes removing the cling film. Anything that is too tightly trapped in between the resin, that's fine. It'll just stay in place and I'll cover it again. Most of it is tearing away pretty easily. Just some large areas here that I need to lift out. Okay. Right, I think I've cleaned most of it out. There are a few stubborn bits, but as long as I haven't got any really large lumps, that should be fine. Okay, I'm going to demold this. And you can see I've only got a few little bits of resin that overflowed. So I'm going to take those off. Anything I can't just pull off with my fingers, I'll remove with a pair of scissors. So I just need to go around and snip those off. They're really tiny pieces. It's where the resin just flowed into the creases of the cling film and overspilled the mould a little bit. But because I kept it in the mould, they're tiny. They're just sitting on the top. All right, this is still a little bit sharp and there is some plastic stuck in there. So I'm going to give this another coat of UV resin. That way I can seal everything in and just smooth out the top a little bit. I'm not covering up that texture I've just created, just kind of rounding out those waves if you like. So again, using my fingers to spread that across, make sure that everything gets covered and I don't end up with too much resin in any one place. That's looking pretty good. Can still see those ripples and I really do think that looks like waves. So I'm pretty happy with that. All right, I'm going to pop this underneath my lamp and cure that and I'll be back. Right, now that I'm happy with the lid, I can demold the pot and have a look and see what we get. So let me just fold this back. It's a pretty flexible mould, but it is quite tight. I can see that I've got a few bubbles, quite a lot of bubbles actually. Yeah, they're on that curve. So that was despite the heat and despite me babysitting this for quite a long time. I can always use a little bit of UV resin to fill those in. I'm not that bothered with them, to be honest with you. They're right on the bottom. So it's not like they're visible from the side. But I'm loving that. That is gorgeous. Oh, that's a little bit tight. Oh, I've still got the ring in there. Let me take that out. I bet that's going to make life easier. Yes, so much easier. Oh, that's pretty. That is really pretty. I like that a lot. So it goes all the way around. I've got that clear section on the bottom. And as I say, I'm not really that worried about those bubbles. The bottom is nice and round. I'm really happy with that. And this is what it looks like with the lid on. It fits, it's round. Yeah, great. I'm not going to leave that lid on though because they're not quite cured. Okay, so I've got an ocean and I want to put some dolphins in it. I've used my Cricut to cut these stickers out. I've used some black smart vinyl and I'm just going to pick them up on the tip of my craft knife. And these are going to go on the inside of the pot. So I'm just going to stick them. Now you can just about see them. They look like they're a little bit rippled, but they're kind of dolphins in the distance. So bear with me. So I'm going to space them out on the inside and I'm trying to stick them in places where the foil isn't quite as rippled. So that you've got a little bit of a smoother section and you can see them better. There's a bit there. Okay, I think you can see that. I'm going to have a pod of dolphins. I found this file on Creative Fabrica and uploaded it to Cricut Design Space. I'll leave a link to that and any of the other supplies that I'm using in the description box below, so be sure to check that. All right, let me just put this last one in place. I also cut some larger dolphins and this time out of silver smart vinyl. So I should be able to just pick these up because they're that much bigger. And I'm going to apply these on the outside. Ooh, what's that? There's a little bit of a lump on the inside of the pot and I think that probably happened when I put that resin ring in there for support. I think I might have kinked my mould as I pushed that in place. So that's something I need to be aware of later. Yeah, there's a little bit of a lump. There's no hole, it's just kind of deformed the mould a little bit. It's okay, it doesn't interfere too much with the pot. Alright, so I'm going to carry on and apply the dolphins around the outside. Okay, so I've got 3 dolphins on there and I think they're pretty evenly spaced. You can see the other dolphins from the inside. I think I'm going to leave it at that. I won't use this other one. I can always save that and I'll pop it on a different project. I'm not going to use the seashells for this. This is meant to be a pod of dolphins in the ocean. I think I'm happy with the way this turned out in the end, although I had a few problems with the heat causing my resin to set so quickly. But yeah, I like it. I hope that you like it too. If you do, please give me a thumbs up, comment, share, hype if you can, and subscribe to my channel if you haven't. It's free and you'll be able to come back and see what I'm going to make next time. Until then, thank you so much for watching. Take care. Bye.